Welcome to the Mac and Jack Attack.
And this is Mac.
And this is Jack. And today we're talking about hype. All right, and today, since we're talking about hype, we wanted to invite our friend George because he has some interesting thoughts about it. So first off, who are you, George, and what are your experiences with hype?
I'm George, and I have been playing video games since the age of 3, basically. And my experience with hype has it's been beneficial, and it also has the other issue being it does ruin the game based on the hype, either by the devs or my own personal expectations of what the game could have been.
Yeah, so something that we spoke on a little bit before doing the podcast was how you see that there are two different types of hype, and you kind of just went into it a little bit now. So what are those two types of hype?
I would say that the first hype is definitely the hype from the devs, saying either they promise this will be a game that will accomplish this, we want to give the players a new experience, and then there's also your own personal hype that could come based upon what you already know of the game's devs or exactly what you expect or you interpret it from them, in the sense of, let's say, developers making a stealth-based game. You might already have expectations from the previous games, like Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell, for example, and you expect them to exceed whatever they accomplished in the past. So then if the game comes out and it doesn't get to that expectation, your own hype made you view that game as being worse or not as good as you originally thought it would be.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. So for the devs promising certain things for a game, what a good example that everyone could point to is easily just No Man's Sky, because they did promise a lot, and at launch they didn't really deliver anything.
It was the worst. It was terrible.
Yeah,
it ruined my whole day.
For me, that's the easy go-to. Do you guys think that you guys have another example of something like that happening?
Honestly, I would say I got about actually probably Fallout 76.
Yeah, that would be another game that people would say failed.
I mean, I got pretty hyped about it. One of my coworkers where I was working at the time got pretty hyped. They even bought the collector's edition, which is pretty insane. But I could see why, with the famous words of Todd Howard, it just works, which no, it doesn't. I could see how devs' promises could really give you the hype and also ruin it as well. So yeah, that's my personal what I think about that for sure.
Yeah, another example for me would be, two examples would have been Hitman Absolution, which was a game I was very hyped for, but it did not deliver to me what I expected from a Hitman game personally. So I would say that might be more because of my own hype on the game. Mm-hmm. And the other game that I think just completely failed just due to hype as well was a game by Konami, which would have been Silent Hill Downpour. And that game just failed miserably on everything. Okay. It just was not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we did establish that there are types of hype, but from where hype comes from, I feel there's a lot more, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of factors.
And I feel what you're talking about, George, is a lot of just company history, where you kind of have this expectation of a company based off of the previous work.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
So it's a lot with the sequels, and you want to have this sequels, they should be better than the games that came before them.
Oh yeah,
I feel nowadays a lot of those cases it's just it's hard for a sequel to be better, especially if the game before it was a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the easiest place for hype to start, is just a company. For me, a lot of companies that gather my interest right away would be Platinum Games with Bayonetta and whatnot, or
Good
Capcom, especially since Capcom has been coming back with Resident Evil and like Monster Hunter and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, their games
Like-
have been delivering.
Yeah, so like what companies give you that hype like right away?
Well, I think Mac would both agree with this
Yeah.
one. CD Projekt Red is a company where if they announce a game, we are instantly hyped simply based on their work with the Witcher series. And hopefully in the future, they reach our own expectations and hype levels with Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah. I mean, like, just to go off with both of you said, right? Realistically, yes, there is a lot of involvement in terms of like what factors in and hype, right? But like, me personally, it does go off as like reputation of a company for sure. Because like, okay, so this is how I see it, right? So basically, yes, for example, Cyberpunk, I'm super hyped about that game because I played the Witcher series. I love the Witcher series. CD Projekt Red. Also, I think they did a pretty good amount for the gaming community as well. And plus, I think they've been pretty fair, especially with their expansion packs during that era of like bad DLCs and all that. And like knowing that they're making a new LP, obviously that is worrisome because I mean they're technically new to that. But them showing gameplay, E3 events, stuff like that. Of course, I'm gonna buy into the hype, right? And knowing the fact that they're what they did for The Witcher, hence going back to like the reputation of the company, you know. So yeah, I could agree with George with that one aspect that Cyberpunk is like one of the hypest games right now.
Just another thing to add on to that. Another reason why that game is also getting so much hype is unlike many of the previous E3s where in future trailers, you would see either downgraded graphics or downgraded populations. Cyberpunk is one of those few games where if you look into their trailers from the very first one to the ones now, it has just been getting better and better rather than downgrading like other games have done in the past.
Okay, so here's the thing with that. With that one, right? Okay, so Witcher 3 has done a similar thing. It has been it was part of the hype because obviously with The Witcher 3 when it first came out at E3, it was very, revolutionary in terms of graphics and gameplay, right? But when the game finally came out, it was nothing like the E3. It was still a good game, right? It was still a good game, but in terms of Cyberpunk, that's where I would have to like diverge a little bit because it's they did done that. Again, it just comes based on the reputation of the company. They have done that before. I'm not really expecting that big of a, what it's shown at E3, but I am expecting it to be a good game, So,
Yeah.
What about you, Jack? What do you think?
About what?
In terms of like hype, in terms of like, for example, how what are you hyped for in terms of games coming out now? Like, are you hype about Cyberpunk as well? And based on what?
I mean, honestly, I'm not really hyped about anything new much. I'm very cautious when it comes to game trailers and like anything about a game. Like, honestly, right now, the only reasons why I am hyped for any games is like their sequels or like add-ons to something like Resident Evil 8 or Miles Morales or like the next Yakuza game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not too cautious about those games, and that's because they have had a history of coming out with like good games and whatnot. Like, I'm not my expectations for some of those games aren't super high.
Right. That's actually a good mentality, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Even with the trailers that I see, I do get hyped, but at the same time, I also view them with a grain of salt, saying trailers are meant to bring you hype. They're meant to say, hey, this game's gonna be amazing and all this. But of course, with how gaming has been in the past few years, our minds have slowly been like, looks great, will it play great?
Right.
And for me, it's like I'm also a huge penny pincher. Like, I'm super cheap, so whenever a game comes out, it's really rare for me to buy a game day one.
Yeah.
Like in the past 2 years, I've only bought a game day one like twice, with Devil May Cry 5 and The Last of Us 2. And the reason why I got Devil May Cry 5 right away was because I waited 10 years for that shit. Like, it better deliver.
Yeah,
and you know, I also saw that the devs were super passionate about what they were making, and everything that I saw from it, I was like, you know, it had a lot to live up to, of course, and they easily could have fucked up, especially after the reboot.
Yeah.
But again, they were just so passionate, and everything that they put out was just like, hey, they're going back to their roots, and that's all what it was about. And you know, I see that a lot with Capcom, with Resident Evil 7 too.
That's cool.
And then like the only reason why I got The Last of Us 2 was because I didn't want to get spoiled. There was a lot of leaks going on, and
Unfortunately, I was one of those
Yeah.
people that got that. Yep. So you would
Yeah.
agree that in terms of like the pedigree of the companies, it does deliver. It does make you hype for the game because of their previous games.
yeah, definitely. Like
Okay.
it's not a good way to go about it, but I feel like a lot of Japanese companies especially, are getting better at like meeting that expectation.
Right.
Where I feel like a lot of Western companies I'm very cautious about, like
As you should,
Ubisoft
actually.
and like BioWare in particular. Like, what the fuck is going on with them now, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's funny because like you're right about one thing's for sure, like because we also got to talk about like there's also comebacks, right? And I think that's also again it's funny because like there's a lot of factors if it comes to hype of games, because like for example, just like you said, Jack, Devil May Cry 5, right? I did not have any hope after the reboot.
Yeah, like Capcom is definitely one of those examples where in the past, during like say the PS2 era, it was like, oh, Capcom's making this game, people get hyped, and then a few years after that, it came to a time where Capcom was that company where people were just like, oh, they're making this game, it's not gonna be amazing. This company has gone downhill. And then recently, with Monster Hunter World, Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, people are looking at them at that same degree of pedigree as before, where you're like, hey, Capcom they got their shit together, basically.
But yeah, that comes into the hype. It's interesting how hype does really do play a role in terms of like, especially in certain factors. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Like, do you guys have any examples of something happening that de-hypes a game for you guys? Like, I brought up The Last of Us 2. Mac, you said that you did see the leaks, and that made you a bit wary. Of course,
Like, what do you-
go into
can-
spoilers?
Explain what do you mean by de-hype? In what way? Like give me like because like when you say that, I'm thinking about what de-hypes a game, right? I'm thinking about Fallout 76, like in terms of like, you know, it just works by the famous Todd Howard. I automatically assume that, you know, the game is going to be great, but when it came out, it didn't deliver at all. That's my way of thinking of de-hyping the game, right? The other de-hyping a game is where I legit got hyped and, you know, actually no, it's the same thing. My bad. Because I'm trying to think of what other games besides Fallout 76. I would say Fallout 4 too, but that was a good game. I just didn't like the way it went. But I didn't like the story. I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but the story really messed me up to the point where I didn't want to play anymore. But that could also be said with Last of Us 2. So that to me de-hypes the game.
Like, I guess for what I mean for de-hyping, it's like, it's a game that you're interested in, or it's a game from a company that you're invested in, or it's a sequel. And then you see like the trailers and gameplay, and you're just like, this isn't what I asked for.
Oh, so like in terms of just gameplay wise, yeah?
Yeah, gameplay, yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, then what is that game called? Shit. Vampires Masquerade?
Yeah, Vampire
Bloodlines.
the Masquerade.
Yeah, I got really hyped with the trailers, but it's obviously CG trailers, but when the gameplay came out, I wasn't impressed.
Because it was in first person.
It just looked terrible. that was just based. That's just my opinion. It just looked terrible to me. I wasn't expecting it to look like that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The gameplay didn't match up to my expectations.
Actually, I think another good example of that might have been with for some people, because this is a game I'm not really that hyped about, but people did point this out a lot. Was the newest Halo game, where people were like, "How does this game look like this?" And everyone just agreed it looked terrible for our times, and I think that's one of the things I would definitely de-hype that game on that basis alone.
Yeah. Did I answer your question, by the way, in terms of de-hyping the game?
In a way, like I was kind of just seeing if there was like other examples. Like for me, this is like a really like it's an older like example, but Dead Island had like a superb first trailer, and everyone was like, "Yo, what the fuck is this game?" I don't know if you guys remember Dead Island.
Yeah, the one
like,
with the child dying, right?
Yeah, and it was like this like emotional trailer, and then you see the game, and it's just like, oh, this game looks like garbage.
Yeah, I guess that could go with the misleading trailers where they'll show like, you know, this whole nice CGI, and then you actually see the game and you're like, wait, this isn't matched with what the trailer is trying to send, because trailers are supposed to send a message as well saying, hey, our game is gonna be about this. Like, I think the old school PS2 era commercials kind of hit it perfectly, where it was like, if they were like a beat 'em up, it would be a wacky commercial,
right?
And if it was a serious tone, you know, it would have a serious sort of message. I think a great example would have been Vice City's trailer, which I still remember because it had 80s music playing in the background, and during the whole time you just heard gunshots, police sirens, and the main protagonist just doing crimes, and you instantly knew, oh, this is that type of game.
Right. If that's the case, then yeah, I'm just gonna go back to Fallout 76 for sure.
Because I feel like a lot of games that kind of lose their hype, it mostly just involves around graphics nowadays. Like, for example, Halo Infinite, which you brought up earlier, George, but I feel like Ubisoft is like the master at doing that with like Watch Dogs and
Siege,
The Division. Like almost all of their games, like they make the trailers look so good, but then like
dude,
the game looks
you honestly
trash.
you're on point on that, dude. Because like, you know, I don't know, like agree or disagree with me. Like with Watch Dogs, right? The main hype, or one of the main hypes, was the fucking graphics, right? That was my main point. It was the fucking graphics. But when the game finally came out, yo, it was shite. It was terrible. Like, you have to go. I know for PC, anyways. You have to go in the files to finally activate that shit. So,
which is one of the main reasons why people hated Ubisoft even more, saying you guys had this. You could have used it on the PC version, but you decided not to. And of course, Ubisoft was like, well, it's not really... They said something along the lines like, it just wasn't that safe to really use. It might crash the game, but I personally have played with that so-called mod on Watch Dogs for PC, and I haven't had any actual visual glitches or bugs with it. The game just looks a lot better, so...
But then again, it just goes into the point that, yeah, Dez will do anything just for hype, because that's a selling point.
Yeah, like I remember Siege's trailer, and I was like, wow, this game looks absolutely beautiful.
And then when it finally came out, it's like,
you're just like, oh,
shit.
It just looks like your typical FPS game.
Yeah, so... Yeah, you're right. I agree on that point for sure. It does revolve also around the graphics too. It's a selling point. Hype is nothing but just a selling point for devs.
Yeah, it is.
At least that's the way I see it.
I mean, I do really see it as just a selling point. That's how they want to sell their game.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that most of the time it's not how the game actually is.
That's the thing. I agree with you on that one. Like, it is what it is, right? But, you know, I mean, in a dev's perspective, and by the way, I'm not a dev, but if I were to play both sides of the story or play devil's advocate, I mean, how else are you going to sell the game? I mean, yes, you could sell it based on the gameplay, but like, I mean, if they know it's
like
shit.
what people say, first impressions matter. As long as the first trailer looks amazing, you're gonna view that game in a better light.
Yeah. All they can hope for is just make the game actually meet their expectations, but in the end of the day, it just depends on the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally agree though, for sure.
How do you guys feel about Kickstarters? Because I feel like a lot of Kickstarter games, it's just because they're trying to get money to invest in making the game, their whole like strategy is just to garner hype. Like a lot of Kickstarter games are just like, hey, I was this developer who worked on Mega Man or Castlevania back in the day, and I want to make a like spiritual successor to it. Or there's a lot of other games where it's just like, hey, we brought on this musical artist who worked on Silent Hill to make like 2 tracks on this game.
Is it Mighty Number 9 a Kickstarter game?
It was, yes.
It was? How do I feel about that? I think it's risky, but I'm not entirely sure how that works, to be honest with you. Because obviously for a Kickstarter game, that's essentially an indie game, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so they need funds to make the game, right? So I could I understand it in a business perspective, because yeah, you need money. And in order, I mean, what's better way to support your, developers by helping
Giving them the money.
Yeah, so to me personally, I find it risky because, like, granted, yes, you're helping your developer out, but at the same time, it's like, yo, what if it's shit? You technically just gave him free money at that point for a game that he didn't even deliver. So, yeah, I think it's way too risky.
Yeah, from what I've seen, most of those games end up usually just failing in the sense where they, if you view it objectively, it just doesn't deliver on being what a decent game could have really done, as in a AAA company could have just made something similar to that and sold it.
Well, to be fair, I don't think. Well, again, I'm not entirely sure, but is there any game that actually succeeded in a Kickstarter?
I think one game, I may be wrong, but I believe Bloodstained was one that was kickstarted and actually is an amazing game, and I've actually played it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
Bloodstained is a really good game. It's like, I think it's the only example that it is the only example that I could think of where it's like a dev from back in the day coming back and making something.
Right.
Like it did take a really long time for it to be actually like released, but like it did deliver for the most part when it was released.
Okay, so here's my question though, right? Because for me personally, I find it risky, because I obviously it feels like you're walking in a foggy plane, and you're just hoping it delivers, right?
Yeah.
With a developer like Bloodstained, right? What do you guys think in terms of, like, I mean, would you ever help a Kickstarter game? To be honest,
I have yet to, but I am super down to.
you're super down. Okay, explain that though in your perspective. Like, why would you be down to support a developer, whether you know the developer back then or not know a developer back then, to help them out with the Kickstarter game? What's your perspective on that?
I think it just really depends on what I am seeing. I feel like a lot of Kickstarter games, they are just Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
Which I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting tired of. But there have been like really good ones, like Hollow Knight was a Kickstarter game. If I had a job when it came into Kickstarting, I would have fucking paid the hell out of that game.
Yeah.
And like Shovel Knight was another amazing game. Like you could just, I mean, like, not saying that I have like an awesome power or some shit like that, but it's just like whenever I see a game, I can kind of just tell if it's gonna be successful or not.
That's the thing.
Just-
That actually is an awesome power, but continue.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't buy Anthem like you did.
Okay, my guy. All right, we'll continue after the podcast. But all right, go for it.
But yeah, it's like I can kind of just tell if a game is gonna be like fun or hype just based off of what I am seeing. Granted, like we said earlier, a lot of developers, they kind of just bullshit something out just to try to make money. But like all of the games that I saw where I was like, I would kickstart this, Like I never did kickstart them, but I did buy it eventually. Like I said,
Okay.
Hollow Knight, Shovel Knight, Bloodstained. Like I would have been down to like put like $100 or $200 on any of those, to be honest.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, George? Would you ever do something, invest?
Honestly, I'd be very risky with it as well. Like you said, it is risky. But if had I known back then, Bloodstained was being worked on by one of the main Castlevania guys, because when I first saw it on Steam, I was like, oh look, someone just loved Symphony of the Night and they just want to make a game based on it. And I was like, it's whatever. And then I decided to finally do my research. I'm like, wait a second, this was made by the guy that made Symphony of the Night, and I love Symphony of the Night. So had I known that this man, who he even said, I think in his Kickstarter, that he wanted to make this game because he kept asking Konami, can I please make a 2D Castlevania game, and they kept telling him no, I would have given him money for that, because I know he knows what a Castlevania game encompasses in a 2D style, and I did buy that game.
Okay. So here's the thing, though, right? Here's another question for you, because like obviously with Jackie, he could essentially, he knows when a game is good, which is good. But like for you, again, it just kind of goes back to like, knowing who the developer is back in the day. So my question to you is, would you ever help out a Kickstarter game in terms of just based on what he's presenting to you? He has no experience in no history of working in any of these famous companies, but what he presents to you is what it is. Whether you're interested, you're like, okay, it looks pretty good. Would you actually invest?
If it's interesting to me and I feel like this person is doing an idea that either I myself have, and it's something I would like to do, but obviously I don't have the knowledge to be able to do it, I would consider giving this person that money just to see what it would come to.
So essentially, for both of you, it's you guys are down to helping a Kickstarter game as long as they do deliver in like onto the hype in terms of how they.
If it's something that I think I would enjoy and that would bring something new to either that genre or gaming as a whole, I would consider putting money down. But if it's someone saying, I just want to make this platformer game that has one unique difference from Mario, then I would be like, I wouldn't invest in that.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, like bringing it back to Mighty Number 9, like it is one of those games where one of the original devs was like helming the Kickstarter. It is scary, like thinking about giving money to someone who like is not entirely sure how they're gonna like go about creating this game in particular.
Yeah.
If I do really see that the devs are passionate about making something, like I'm down to like
You could see it, right?
I think you could.
People
'cause
could see
for Mighty Number 9, it was like I could kind of see the sketchiness from it too, just because shit, what is his name? But yeah, the dev. What's up?
No, I actually don't know who the who the developer. I know he was one of the creators of what's that?
Mega Man.
Mega Man.
Inufune, that's his name.
Inufune. Got you. Okay.
But yeah, he technically wasn't a game designer. I think he kind of just helped design Mega Man or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So he worked on a lot of the Mega Man games, and he was like the producer for the series, but he's not really a developer. Or one of the guys at Platinum, Kamiya, was like, Inafune, he's a really good businessman, but he's not a developer. So it's just like he was able to garner a lot of hype and being like, hey, I want to make a spiritual successor to Mega Man, but at the end of the day, it's like it wasn't a good game because like he wasn't able to develop a good game.
Right.
But he was able to make a shit ton of money because he was a good businessman. So there is that scary portion to it,
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like a lot of Kickstarters, they do come out with a lot of updates on how the game is going, and like of course at that point, like you kind of already gave them money, so
Yeah,
it's not
so
like you could take that money back.
It's non-refundable, so
Yeah, so it's like you're kind of fucked if the game looks like shit.
Yep. See, that scares me for sure. It's yeah, that's the only reason. Like for me personally, I don't see myself like actually like spending money on a Kickstarter game. Cause like I get it, yeah, the developers, small developers like that do need the money to make their game dream come true, right? But you know, just like George here, I it depends what you worked on, you know. So
That definitely helps knowing that you're actually a competent dev and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So at least you know your money's going toward something that could work. But if it's like someone who says, I learned how to code last year and I want to make this game, you'd be like, I don't think I want to give you money right now.
right. It's funny because like there's this one game, I don't think you guys are familiar with this. This is probably the only game I actually like invested in. It's a Kickstarter game, right? Have you guys ever heard of an indie game called Interstellar Marines?
I have not.
I think I saw it like way back in the day.
Okay, so here's the thing. They do have coding experience, but they never really worked on a game before, right? They advertise that for sure, but they advertise that they're super passionate about the game, and I saw it in the trailer. Again, it kind of gave me hype, and it's like, okay, I saw their passion. They love the games. I'm gonna invest like $30 into this. The guy was like, oh, I'm inspired by Half-Life, System Shock, BioShock. Is that right? System Shock. Yes, it's BioShock. And it's like, you know, after hearing those, I was like, yo, those are my 3 favorite games too. And this is the lead developer. Let's go. Here's my wallet. I'm gonna give you 30. So I give him $30, or I give the company $30. Yo, to this very date, it isn't even finished. It's not even finished. And he gave out in his idea trailer, right? Legit, so many ideas, story-wise, gameplay-wise. I was so hyped. And for a small company like that, because the first thing I was thinking, this is during the time Minecraft was becoming a thing. If Minecraft could make it, these guys could probably make it. You know what I mean? So, to this very day, they're not done yet. And I get that they're a small company, but they made a timeline, right? They never fulfilled those timelines. And I think they charged $50 3 years ago for a deluxe edition for something that's not even finished. So, like I said, I don't know the developing side of things, because I know it's probably really hard. It's super hard, right? So that's probably why they have to keep, you know, delaying the game. But that to me, because of that, that's probably why I find it super risky, and I'm probably never going to do that again. So,
Now I have a question for you guys.
what's up?
How do you get hyped for a game that like you know nothing about? Like, again, earlier I said that most of the games that I'm hyped for, they're just like sequels or from companies that I'm like familiar with. But are there like any other games that you're like, I don't know anything about the developers, I don't know anything about?
That would, for me, it's Interstellar Marines. All those guys, the way they advertised it, it's new. For something like that to happen, for me to get hype, it's basically the idea. It's like they're basically proposing me the resume, not the resume, but their resume and ideas. And if I invest in that company, what are you getting out of it? And I do got, like, again, for Interstellar Marines, yes, I know they said they're into developing, but they haven't worked in any famous games at all, like any AAA game or any game at all in general. I got excited because the developer in which he advertised is into the same games I'm into, and he proposed the ideas of the game in which I thought it was pretty cool. And I would love to invest in those ideas and make it probable. That's what makes me invest in a Kickstarter game.
Yeah, I guess I'm like trying to step away a little bit from the Kickstarter thing, and I'm just kind of talking about games in general.
Oh, just games in general? Oh, yeah.
Like
Then it's just ideas.
Yeah, because for one example, like Horizon Zero Dawn. Like I've never played anything from Guerrilla Games. Like I just thought that it looked fascinating just because it was like robot dinosaurs. Granted, I still haven't beat the game, but it's like that was enough of a selling point for me. Like where I was just like, hey, that seems pretty exciting. It's something new.
Yeah.
The gameplay looks different from most open world games that were coming out at the time until Breath of the Wild came and fucking killed everyone with open world games.
Yep.
They did.
But, yeah, like
actually,
how do you get hyped for a game that you're not like familiar with?
it would just have to be the idea of it.
Yeah, I
ideas
feel
and
like
gameplays.
that idea thing fits with me because there definitely has to have something that's unique or either something that I personally enjoy. For example, I do love the cyberpunk theme, futuristic dystopias and all that.
Yeah.
So if there was a game that comes out and it offers those same ideas, I would be interested almost immediately just because I'm like, hey, that's something that I enjoy, so I would probably like whatever they're making. And then after that, it would be their trailers, or even trailers though do get me hype. I think the thing that gets me into that selling point is if they actually show gameplay of whatever it is that they're doing.
I agree for that for sure.
Once you show me gameplay, I have an idea of what I'm getting into, and I can be like, hey, I will enjoy this, or it's just something that I might like, but it's a game that I'll find fun for 4 hours and then maybe not go back to.
Actually, to touch up on that point, because I agree with that too, because even if it's new developer, if I don't know anything, I do have to see some sort of gameplay, and it's generally just the idea of it. If it sounds cool, I'll give it a shot. And mostly the genre of terms of video games are usually the same: fantasy, action, shooting.
Yeah.
If it's new, I'm pretty much sold. Me personally. Like if it's like, oh, it's a good idea and it's new, okay, I'll give it a shot. That's how I get hyped for something that's completely, especially if it's a developer I never heard of. Because you're right about one thing for sure. Verizon. No, not Verizon, my bad.
Verizon Wireless.
Please sponsor us. What is that called? What's that game called? Horizon
Zero Dawn.
Yeah, you know what? That game, just like what Jack said, it's I did play their Killzone games because it's made by Guerrilla. Am I right?
Yeah, same company.
They made Killzone. Yeah, it's an Ike game, and the fact that this game that they made, Horizon Zero Dawn, is completely new with the games. Like they never made a game like that before.
Yeah.
So knowing what, just seeing the E3 gameplay of it, got me sold. So just like you, it's a cool ass idea. I like the idea. It looked cool. So.
Yeah, because I'm remembering back in the day, the old school way back during the PS2 era, I got hyped with games was actually from their magazine subscription, where PlayStation Underground would send you a demo disc. Dude. Because that right there, you get a small glimpse of what you're getting, and you're like, yo, I love this game. And those games that I was super hyped for, I would literally replay those demos over and over again.
I think
they were straight up
demos
games, man.
is like demos are a lost art form. Like you don't. 100%. I mean, there are still demos that come out, but it's just like, hey, this is the first chapter of the game. Like, yeah, I'm gonna play through that shit anyways. But it's just like being able to do more than just what you do in the beginning. It's like you get to experience the game more. I mean, there are some games. Agree. Yeah, there are some games that have like a really strong intro, and then they do that as a demo. Where I'm like, I'll replay the shit out of that. Like, Ghost Runner, Mac. Like last time you were over at my place, we were playing Ghost Runner. Like, dude, I've played that demo like 20 times now.
Dude, like straight up, dude, good example. Blade Runner, right? I played it at his house.
Or Ghost Runner.
Ghost Runner, my bad. Literally, like, I am now hyped for the game. Like, I can't wait, because it's not out yet, yeah?
It's not out yet.
Oh, dude, I can't wait till it's out. Like,
yeah, for me, the example, too, for that demo was the Resident Evil 2 one-shot demo, which only had you playing for, I think, a minimum of 1 hour before I played that, and I was like, I cannot wait for this game to come out, because that demo it brought me back to that original Resident Evil 2 feeling, where instead of just putting a whole bunch of zombies in your face, they only have a few zombies, but hey, guess what? You only have 13 bullets, so you have to be very smart because you know this is Resident Evil, there's gonna be bosses, and it just brought back that, it made me feel that feeling of like dread and like, yeah, this is survival horror back to its basic principles.
I think that idea of having it only be an hour and you can't play it again afterwards is like an even better way of gathering
Hell yeah!
Because it's just like, hey, you just played it, you can't touch it anymore until it comes out.
Dude,
yeah,
see, like, it's... I agree, it's a lost art form. I don't know why they don't do that no more. But, it really does increase the hype for a game. Just like Jack said, right? Like, literally, the fact that you can't... If you die, you die. Or if after an hour, it's over. Dude, like, it's like, okay, wait a minute. I have to get the game. I gotta finish it. You know what I mean? So it's like... Yeah, dude, it is a lost art form. I wish they did bring it back, but... It is what it is.
I would have hoped that PT made companies be like, hey, people actually enjoy these demos. We should start just being like, hey, we don't like even stop that BS of like, hey, you pre-order, you get access to this open beta that multiplayer games like to do. Yeah. Which again, if you're saying you pre-order, you gain access to an open beta. Yeah, let me tell you something. That's not what an open beta means. It's a closed beta, because only a few people can get into it. But I feel like if more game companies start bringing out demos of what their games can offer, it would definitely get people hyped, because they'll be like, wow, there's these things you can do. And guess what? You might even find a few bugs, because there are people who will literally just spend hours trying to clip out of bounds just because they're like, hey, I found this glitch.
Yep.
Like, do you think that there aren't as many demos because there are those companies like Ubisoft where the game isn't anything like what they were showing in presentations?
Actually, yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a little beef with that, because like, it's pretty evident why they won't. Okay, I feels like I'm in the minority, and please jump in to correct me. But to me, it feels like the main reason why they won't give out a demo is because they know it's shit. Like, it's not gonna be exactly what they showed in E3, and they're afraid of that. That's what I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, another reason why I think dev like Ubisoft also doesn't do that would be because on my experience with Ubisoft games, all of them that I've played all follow the very same trend. Yeah. You start off, there's gonna be some kind of watchtower that you need to climb, find access to, unlock part of the map, which then unlocks extra stuff for you to do, which ends up being 3 to 5 different side quests are all the same, that'll give you the same rewards. And I've done that because Assassin's Creed, I saw that with Far Cry, and even with Watch Dogs, when I got Watch Dogs, I was like, wait a minute, I'm just doing the same thing I used to do in the previous games. There's nothing new, it's just a different way of doing it. And that's one of the biggest beefs I have with Ubisoft as a company. I feel like they just rehash the same ideas in a different area, basically.
And plus, how do you make it? Because again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't play that much Ubisoft games. Since most of their games are RPG based now, multiplayer based. Obviously, with Assassin's Creed single player RPG, but like, how do you make a demo out of that? You know what I mean? Like, maybe you could do the thing where it's like an hour of gameplay and that's it. Because to get hype over a game, it's you gotta play something that's epic, right? Like something like, it's just like Jack said, like, it's gotta be like the intro, right? The intro or a certain chapter that's pretty poppin'. It's just like you said, it's essentially the same missions half the time. Yeah, like
with Watch Dogs, with Watch Dogs, I feel like the only thing you can do is make it so that you have to play a mission that forces you to use all the hacking tools so you get a taste of it. But then again, even with that, I don't even remember any actual memorable missions from Watch Dogs 1 that I can be like, wow, this was amazing. Yeah. So that's one of the downsides with it. If you don't have a memorable moment, whether it's good or bad from a game, it might have just not been that great of a game.
Oh no, it's That's what I, you know what? That's what I think for sure. That's why they don't do demos no more.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, Jack, what do you think?
They need to bring demos back, man. I love playing demos. Like,
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, I agree with that.
it
Demos.
is. It's such a big selling point for me when I'm able to play a game. Like, I mean, like, you know, there's big game events. Well, not anymore because COVID. But like
Yeah.
E3 where E3 where they're like journalists who they get to go play these games and they write an article about it or make like a YouTube video about it. But it's just like it's not the same as actually getting hands on it. Like, it's pretty shitty that like you don't get the same experience as journalists. I mean, granted, you know, it's their job, but
Yeah.
it's like being able to experience a game before deciding to put $60 on it is like a huge deal for me. Like,
Yeah.
even if the game is shit, like if the story is shit, just if I'm able to touch the game and like get a feel for the gameplay and just be like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I don't really give a shit about the story. Like, I'm still gonna pay to play that game.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, because it was honestly a demo of Ratchet and Clank that made me buy the game because I loved that demo so much. And yeah, that's one example of a game that hyped me up, and I still view Ratchet and Clank as a great game.
Hell yeah, dude.
It's amazing.
For sure.
So that hype actually worked in their favor.
But yeah, man, it's yeah, they should totally bring demos back. It really does help them sell the game, especially give out more hype because you know it's gonna be fun if you had fun playing the demos.
Yeah, and what I mean, a better way of saying it is exactly like, hey, did you play the demo for, you know, we'll say Cyberpunk, and then everyone will be like, there's a demo for it?
Yeah.
Where? I need to download it right now.
Yeah,
and
'cause,
you know,
another recent demo that I played was the Final Fantasy VII remake demo, and like,
yeah.
I mean, this kind of worked in a different way. Like, I didn't get as hyped for the game because like I
Wow,
missed the
okay.
old turn-based combat, but just being
Respectfully,
able to
okay.
experience it and share my experience with just a demo with my friends was like, it was interesting on its own, where it's just like, hey, do you think you're gonna buy this game because you played the demo?
Right. I totally agree, man. For sure.
Yeah, so I think that about does it. We had a pretty good discussion about hype.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, George, for coming on.
No
Yeah,
problem.
man.
Thanks for having me.
For
Yeah,
sure.
I
Yeah.
feel like I really like your like thoughts on how there are two different types of hype. Like, we didn't talk about it too much, but I feel like there wasn't too much to be said about it. Like, there is. Of
It was
course.
very interesting at best. Like, it was because like just like you guys said, there's a lot of factors to hype, and your point of view was very interesting on it. So again, thank you so much for joining.
Of course.
And,
So yeah, yeah. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Mac and Jack Attack.
Once again, I just want to say thank you to George. Really liked his inputs. It was very interesting. And guys, if you guys enjoy our podcast, please give us a check on Spotify, iTunes, and on YouTube. The links will be provided in the description below. Thank you.
Mac, is that you? Oh shit, not you again.